friends, I want to talk with you about the stitches that are used to make the cast-on roses here. I call them cast-on roses with a double needle, and I'll show you what that means in just a minute, but it makes really ruffly like this, especially if they are overwrapped. Like this one right here is not overwrapped, and so it lays pretty flat, but this one right here is overwrapped, meaning that I did more wraps than could possibly fit in that space, and that's how I get the ruffle. Like this one right here has, oops, let's move it closer and let's zoom in. This one right here has just the right amount of wraps, because those lay flat. But if I put excess wraps in it, then I'll get more of a ruffly look like this. So I didn't do excess wraps on all of them on this, I just did it on some of them. So I usually edged one so that it would show that. And if you look closely, you can see I didn't cover every little bit of wool. Sometimes it peeks out around the edges. Sometimes, let's find a spot, sometimes it peeks out around the middle. Now you can take your thread and tack it down in between there if you need to. You don't want to tack it flat. You like some of that texture to it. But if you need to tack it because you feel like it's too much sticking out, then go ahead and tack it down. Like this one right here, I just finished doing, and I might try and tack just the middle of that down so that it covers that one a little bit better. Okay, but how do you do it? Okay, the other thing about this is that this, you know from looking at your pattern that the shapes of the inside are blobs, sometimes with spiral wings going out from it. I covered those with the darker color wherever the wool ends up on it, and then put the lighter ones in between. So some of them, mostly pink ones, have those spirals that are mixed like this. Okay. They're just supposed to look watercolory here and there. So let's do one on this spot. So you can see that this space has already been filled, but I need to fill the rest of the light space here. And I've got one on that side that will mostly cover that. This is going to be a short one right here, so I'm going to do it next, okay? So because this is a bullion knot, well, it's a cast-on bullion, we want a bullion knot needle. And as far as which size to use, it doesn't matter because we're going to make it extra wide, but I'm using just the regular long one, even though this is a size 8 thread. So I think what I want to do is come from right over here all the way around to right here. So I'm going to come up over here. Even though that's dark, I think that I'll cover it with this light one anyway. And then I'm going to want the end of it to tuck down right over here. So that ended up being longer than I thought originally. Okay, and so for a cast-on bullion or a bullion needle, remember that you come out where you want on one end, you go in on the other end and pull it to through, but you don't go all the way through. Okay, and I've got my loop out here. Okay, this is the double needle part. What we want is wraps here that are really tight, tighter than what the thread is, so they leave an excess laciness to them. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. Some people will slip a straw over top of this. That works, but you got to have the right thickness of straw, and I didn't have that right thickness on me. Some will hold a toothpick next to it. That's okay too, but it's a little bit hard to keep the toothpick down here on this bottom end. Lots of people will do a double needle. I didn't bring all of my needles over here, but they'll do a double needle, meaning that they take a second needle and weave it through the fabric right next to that one, and that gives them that double needle. And I like the double needle because it'll stay in the right spot. So this one is not threaded, it's just next to it to give us more width there. But I have found the way that I like to cast on, which is the way I learned to cast on in knitting, that as I do that, I don't know if you can see how beat up my finger is right here. I'm always rubbing over top of this edge right here, and I dig that into my, you can see how torn up it is. I've been working on this for a few days. It pokes holes in it, even with the preventative measures. So what I'm going to use is my biggest needle. This is either a chenille 18. I think that's what it is a chenille 18. And I go the opposite direction. So I just poke it down in right next to where that one is. And I'm using my fingernails here, although if you didn't have strong fingernails, fake ones like mine, you could do it the other way. But I want this needle to be just barely taller than the point next to it. And that way, when I rub over top of it like this, I'm not poking myself because this bigger needle protects me. So that's why I do it like this. Okay, now we need to do the cast on loop. So one way to do that is to hook your finger and twist before you put it down. The key being that the thread that's coming out over here has to be under the wrap, like that. I learned to do it the way that I cast on for knitting. And so I hold it. Let's see if I might have to zoom out a little bit. Let's see. Okay, I hold the thread in my left hand and I'm holding the needles over here. I take my pointer finger underneath and I tuck my thumb down in here so that I can stretch these like this over my thumbs. And then I twist it around, drop your thumb down, and that will leave you a little X right here underneath, and that X goes over top. So at first, I think this way might feel a little awkward to you, but these, like to do a piece this long, I will need between 45 and 60 wraps or 60 cast-ons. And so because I'm going to want so many, learning to do it this way, you can see my thumb stays on this each time. It's just my pointer finger that goes under and loops it every time. And then my left hand's job is just to hold it in place and make sure they get tucked down there tight. So you just have to do enough cast-ons. And this one in particular, all the cast-ons go on the same size. There are some fancy Brazilian embroidery flowers where the cast-ons go on opposite sides. You don't want to pull that thread through to make sure that it stays threaded. Now, when I get down to the end of my thread, the last one I do, I'll pull it out because it's just too short for me to do that. And then I'll rethread it before I pull it through. Let's see, I'm not sure how many we have on there, but you can kind of look at this and see that it's not going to make it all the way around there. I have about half enough right now. So let's keep going. My, excuse me, my bigger needle, they aren't supposed to be on top of each other. If we get one of those, let's see if we can fix that. Honestly, in this, there we go. It was the second to the last one I did it messed up. Because we want them to be loose and lacy, if they overlapped like that, it's not the end of the world. But I'll keep my back finger holding it more securely in that spot to keep them from jumping on top of each other. Notice that this one has gone up just a little bit from that one. That makes it smoother. And the closer I get to the tip, the more I need that smoothness to not poke holes in my finger. Okay, let's look at that now. Now, the distance that this is spread out on here looks like it'll be enough to go around there, but when I pull it tight, I still don't quite think I have enough. I'm going to go ahead and do 10 more. But you'll notice as you're putting them on that because this is a size 8 thread, even 10 more is not very much. It's only a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. So in length, when you're thinking about that, adding 1 or 2 is not going to make a huge difference. Adding 8 or 10 might. All right, I'm going to try zooming it back in just a little bit so that you can see a little bit better what we do after we have enough wraps. Okay, I'm going to pull this loop out. My goal here is to make sure that the tail is short, because if the tail gets in the middle, it can easily tie it in knots. Okay, and now I don't need my extra needle, so I'm going to pull out my extra needle. Now I'm ready to pull the bullion knot through, and obviously my thumb can't cover the whole thing, so just hang on to this end of it and pull it through. Now the key is when you're laying it down, you want the ridge, see how there's a ridge on the one side, you want that to stay to the outside. So I usually end up going back and grabbing a hold of the pieces and just making sure that that ridge, as I'm tightening it up, stays out there where it's supposed to. And now don't pull them too tight. If you can pull them super tight and they're on top of each other, but you don't need to pull them that tight. Just pull it tight enough to fill the space that you have. Right like that, and then take this thread down to the back, and you could tie it off there if you were finishing. I've still got to fill in the rest of this space. Okay, so that is how you do a double needle cast on bullion. Remember that second needle's job is just to make your loops fat so that they give you this lacy frilly edges. It's never threaded. And you can use a toothpick, you can use a straw, anything so that your cast on is going to be wider than what you need. I choose to use a needle because I always have one with me if I'm stitching. And I really like it in backwards so I can protect that sore spot. Even with it protected, I still beat it up quite a bit. Okay, we'll see you next time.